Thank you.
Hello, you got it.
That's been bugging me for a week. Thank you.
All right. So hi, Diane. Hi, Frank. April. Who else we got? Allison. Victoria. Paula. Glenda's there somewhere. I see some black boxes, but. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are 10 after, so we want to respect everyone's time. Just let me do a little screen share here. And if you have questions for any of the guys during our meeting, let's just raise your hand, and I'm going to have Lee, if you'll keep an eye on the chat box for us. That would be great. That way we'll know if someone has a question, because sometimes it's hard for me to do that many things at one time. That's what happens. All right. So thank you guys for being here today. We are already at the end of May, into June, halfway through the year. It just is crazy that this has already been where we are right now. I'm excited to say I will be in the Woodlands next week on Thursday for a week. So I'm so excited to come and see you guys finally. I'm going to don my black mask and show up there in the office. So let's hope I get there safely. But anyway, so we're going to start out today with Jason. Jason's here, and he is going to kind of catch us up on what's going on in the mortgage world. And he's going to talk a little bit about how we can bulletproof our transactions. So Jason, you want to take that away?
Sure, Tina, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of you on the call, but what I want to go over how to bulletproof your transactions from a lending perspective. And then we'll just open it up for some questions, because I know there's a lot of changes going on in the mortgage industry. It's changing rapidly from day to day, really. And what I'm seeing from our perspective is we're getting a lot of calls at our office for saving deals. I literally had one 2 minutes before the call from one of the agents at KWWD saying I was supposed to close yesterday. It's not closing. Listing agent will not extend the contract. So what I've noticed in Texas is somewhat lenient. Tina, you might see it differently in different states. I know Arizona, you missed a close date. It's going to be held up. Texas just seems a little more laid back, but with the limited inventory that probably Alex Moss is going to talk about, people aren't messing around. And with COVID, they're not messing around with close dates. And so I'm seeing a lot of people with contingencies in these close dates. I'm seeing a lot of just issues pop up with things changing so fast. So I want to talk a little bit about bulletproofing your listings. We came up with a sheet in our office. It's questions to ask lenders. So this is bulletproofing your transaction if you're having financing on a deal with any lender, okay? And so I think that's the biggest wild card. I mean, repairs are repairs. Deals will always call out those are repairs that you can't overcome. But probably the thing that makes you most sick to your stomach is when you have a willing and able buyer and they're supposed to be closing on a house and the seller wants to sell. Then you have moving trucks involved as well too. And then you have some issue. I think I heard someone, I think Betsy was saying, that's been spending all morning trying to unravel an issue, right? It's sad to say that probably 65% of all y'all's issues has to do with the lender. So if I was a listing agent, these are the questions I would ask. Tina has this handout, so if you guys want it, I'm sure she'll be happy to email it to all you guys. Here's the top questions I would ask if I was a listing agent to see what you're dealing with, all right? So number one, all right, these are mortgage company, this section's mortgage company questions that you can ask. Number one, are you a bank, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac direct lender, correspondent lender, or mortgage broker? Okay, super important when you get an offer on one of your transactions or if you have a buyer buying to find out what they are. Like you all know that Wells Fargo and Chase is a bank, right? It's a retail bank. I should probably have retail bank on it. So those are pretty self-explanatory. All right. But what the heck is a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac lender? Okay, this is something you guys need to know. Chase just put an article out a couple weeks ago. Wells Fargo followed right behind it saying, we are only servicing Chase clients. We will only do transactions with 20% down and 720 credit, I think was the credit score they said. You want to put 10% down, you're not our client, we're not doing it for you, okay? And so A bank really underwrites only their guidelines. That's it. Okay, they don't go outside the box. This is what we do, and we won't get it. A Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac direct lender, you get Ginnie Mae to that matter. Ginnie Mae is just FHA. That's a lender who can sell straight to the agencies. They sell straight to Wall Street. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac direct means I don't care about selling to Chase, Wells Fargo, Citibank. I don't care about the guidelines. As long as I have an automated approval, I can do your loan. Okay, and that's what Cherry Creek is. There's other lenders in the Woodlands that are Fannie direct. But it is a good question to ask. Okay, what gets kind of skewed is you have a lot of correspondent lenders in the area. Correspondent mortgage companies lend with their own money, so they seem like a mortgage company with their own money, but all they sell to is, guess who? Wells Fargo, Chase, Citibank. They cannot sell straight to the agency. So it's cool if they do that because they have a little more control than a broker. But if Chase says these are our guys, that's their rules too, okay? They don't have the avenue to go straight to the agencies. And then you have the mortgage broker. I used to be a mortgage broker a long time ago, and they have actually zero control right now. So I would not want to get in a mortgage broker position. They're still closing loans, but if a company, so I have my operations manager that works for us. His wife works in the mortgage broker environment. So mortgage brokers go to her because she has really good interest rates. Do you want to guess how long they're in underwriting right now? Underwriting is 15 days. Underwriting. Versus a correspondent lender or a Fannie and Freddie direct lender was probably 24 to 48 hours. So something important to ask, right? And then mortgage brokers also don't have control of the appraisal process typically. All right. Number two, are you a local company? I think that speaks for itself. Do you work in an office environment, or do you work totally from home? I know of a loan officer in this area. Does decent business, but she only works from home. All right. I think that's important. I want to know that if I'm a client or not. Do your underwriters work for your company, or they outsource to another company? All right. Has the file been formally underwritten? Yes or no? Do you have an automated approval? Yes or no? Okay. The reason that's important is a lot of loan officers will just run credit, look at the income, and say you're good to go. So automated AUS approval is a great question. Have you run the automated system? If a lender is correspondent and they have an automated approval and they say the lender changed guidelines, then you can probably switch the loan to a Fannie and Freddie Mac lender and still get it closed because you have an AUS approval. Okay. May I have your cell phone number in case I run into a problem? All right. You'll learn a lot about a lender whether you can have your cell phone or not. How long have you been a lender? That's an important question. Is your direct supervisor here in Houston? Are they remote? In this environment, is 30 days a timeline easily doable for you and your team under the new world we live in? Yes or no? Okay. If no, how many calendar days will it take you to fund a loan? And I put on here 30, 45, or 60 days plus. Okay. There are some banks that are taking 60 days plus. I think USAA and maybe Fed are taking 60 days plus. So it's okay if a lender takes 60 days plus if you have 60 days to give. You just want to know and make them put it in writing. Right? Have you run and reviewed a tri-merge credit report for your client? Okay. What some lenders are doing, which is really scary right now, I've literally heard this coach, hey, just run one credit report. Because credit reports are expensive. Just one run report. If you get a 750 credit score, you're probably okay. Okay. So a question would be like, hey, did you run all three bureaus? Okay. So those are all mortgage company questions. Borrower questions. What's the loan type? Of course, loan type is usually on the financing addendum, but I would still ask, hey, I just want to confirm this is a conventional loan. You're not switching to FHA on me. Or if this is FHA, I want to make sure you're going to switch to some bond program or not. So I put FHA, VA, USDA, bond program. So a bond program can go on a conventional FHA loan. And so you want to make sure whether you're dealing with a bond program, a combo loan or a jumbo loan. All right. Have you met with this client in person or virtually? I would ask the question, are your credit scores over 700, yes or no? This is a listing agent. Or are your credit scores over 640? The industry is having issues right now with FHA loans under really under 660 credit scores. Some banks are not even doing the FHAs. Some of them have premium priced the loan because the loan's really risky, and if it goes into there's nowhere to go. They have to pay the payment on it. So what they're doing is they have 5% interest rates on FHAs. So if a client pre-approved at 3.25, and then all of a sudden their guidelines have changed, a client may not want to buy the house or qualify. Okay? Are there any derogatory items in the credit that will be up to the underwriter to review how they will and how will they impact the loan? Do you have any knowledge that your buyer has filed for forbearance on the mortgage or missed a payment on any liabilities? Here's why it's important, okay? They just came out here recently and said, hey, if you take forbearance, you cannot get a loan. Now they just came out and said, if you took forbearance, you must make 4 payments, mortgage payments, and then you can get into a loan, okay? So the guidelines are a little all over the place, but they did come out, like our company says, okay, you can be in forbearance, you can take in a forbearance, but you've had to have made 4 payments since that forbearance to do a mortgage loan for you. So your clients won't tell you probably if they took the forbearance. I just had a doctor that makes a lot of money. He took the forbearance. He was like, well, why not? I mean, it's a business decision. I don't have to make the payment. Why wouldn't I take it? I don't know. Although my practice is okay, I don't know what the future's going to hold. So some good clients could have taken that forbearance. Okay. Or did you miss a payment on any of the liability? Okay. So are they getting a gift for the down payment? I've had clients in the past say, I'm getting a gift. And when it comes down to getting the gift, they have issues getting the money. Or they say, oh, well, my parents were going to borrow the money. Have funds been verified? So just like a cash transaction, right? You typically verify that you have funds, right? As a loan officer, verify they actually have the funds. A lot of deals are pre-qualified with the client saving money, saving a paycheck. Hey, we're really close, and by the time we buy, we should have enough money. So that's a great direct question to ask, right? Is your borrower W-2 or self-employed, and have you reviewed their paycheck stubs, W-2s, tax returns, and bank statements? As a listing agent, if the listing agent was asking you this question, if Scott Larry called me up and said, hey man, you got pre-approval letter on this client, can you fill out this form for me? I wouldn't have had any issues with it. Okay. So I think knowledge is power. If you can get this form filled out, then at least you know what you're doing. If they change your tune later on, like, well, what's up with the form? Right. So that's a way you can bulletproof your transaction with a mortgage loan. The other thing that I'm seeing before I wrap up here is I see a lot of agents right now writing offers because it's a tight inventory just to get the deal on 2-week closes, 2.5-week closes. We can close in 2 weeks. I can tell you it's very, very limited because it's so busy out there right now. I like to talk about the appraisal surges and the title companies taking money. It's just really busy out there right now. So I would be very careful. If you want to bulletproof your transaction, give yourself 3.5, 4 weeks to close the deal. I wouldn't write a contract any less than 3 weeks in this environment to keep yourself from having a situation where you're having to switch gears at the last second. And then also I would avoid writing contracts on Mondays. That's my personal opinion. Monday closings typically really suck, period. But they really stink because if you think you're writing a 3-week contract, and you write it on Monday, you really just wrote a 2.5-week contract. Any good lender is going to make sure, come hell or high water, they're done without knowing the Friday before. I'm not going to wrap it up on Monday morning. So your 3-week closing just came into a 2.5 weeks. So always call the lender, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Say, hey, I don't have no right or wrong answer. I just need the real answer. Like, how long is it going to take to close it? And you'll save yourself a lot of heartaches on those regards. So does anybody have any questions on the list? Or that's what I would do to bulletproof a mortgage loan with any lender out there right now. I think you'll unravel some red flags really quickly, especially if you have multiple offers. This will help you decide if we can do it. So,
Right.
Any questions on that form or those questions or any other mortgage related questions?
Yeah, Jason, we had a couple of questions. One was, where do you see the rates going in the next 12 months?
Okay. So I had a video podcast 2 weeks ago. I had a guy named Barry Habib on. So if you guys watch out, I'm doing some Facebook Live stuff about once a month. I usually have a special guest on. You guys, I'd love you guys to show up. Barry Habib is like a mortgage legend. He's owned several mortgage companies. He's from New York, written several books about interest rates. He honestly, when you guys call me up and say, hey, what's the market doing? How are the rates? I'm usually looking at Barry Habib's feed on what the market's doing. We get text messages from this company. It's called NBS Highway. And so he says that he feels that interest rates will go below 3% for 30-year fixed mortgages as soon as the government starts pouring more money into the stimulus. So they very well could go under 3%. So I told a client today who was refinancing, I was like, man, it's marginal whether you should do it or not. Why don't you just wait till the end of the year? They'll probably go under 3%. So they're going to stay low for a long time, and that you may see 30-year rates under 3%.
Right. Okay. One other, let's see. Someone asked, what loan amount is considered a jumbo loan?
Loan amounts over 5, 10, 400.
Okay.
So you touched on it. Jumbo loans are becoming harder and harder to do. We can do $1 million deal. So here's kind of your metrics. $1 million purchase, 1.1. You can still stay out of the jumbo arena. You can do a $510,000 first lien and do a $350,000 second lien. You can still put 20% down. So that's a way you can maneuver around a jumbo loan and not have to worry about it. But a lot of Fannie Mae direct lenders like Cherry Creek, a lot of correspondent lenders, and almost all brokers lost a lot of their jumbo channels. Okay. So, I had a realtor call me and say, I have a relocation deal. It's with Wells Fargo, and it's reload. It's a jumbo. I said, you might be best to stick with Wells Fargo. Honestly, it would probably be a better rate. It would probably be close. And Jeremy Scott will tell you, I don't look for a business out like that very often, but you also got to be honest with the client. We also have a local Houston bank that can get jumbo stuff done up to $2 million for the case. They're a portfolio. But jumbo, you got to be very careful.
Okay. So Jason, we had someone ask that you go over the Monday issue one more time and just speak kind of clearly. Your microphone's a little bit garbled, so they didn't quite hear what you said.
The money issue?
The Monday issue, like why you don't want to close on a Monday.
Right. So if you're competing on a listing, and so the problem is it's a tight inventory market, right? And so a lot of realtors think, well, I got to have the fastest close date. So if I can close faster, I'm going to win the deal, right? And so if you write a deal and say it's 3 weeks out by your calculation, but you close on a Monday, right? We really have to have the deal done by Friday around noon to close on time. So you just made that, you back out Saturday and Sunday, you just made that a 2.5 week close, which is going to be super, super tight. Okay, so just be real careful with that. Does that answer your question, Tina?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Jason? You guys want to raise your little hand or type it in the chat right quick before we move on? All right. Thank you so much, Jason, for being with us today and giving us that update. And so next we are going to have Alex Mesa. He is with Intech Appraisals. Sorry. I'm trying to do like 3 things at one time here. So anyway, so Alex, thank you so much for being with us today. And we are interested in like what is happening in the appraiser world, like how are appraisals happening now, like what's changed, what's different. Just kind of fill us in on that.
Sure. So let's start from end of February, early March. We heard about this pandemic. As appraisers, we were a little nervous because one of the things we need to do when we're doing an appraisal is actually go in and do a site visit. So we were making homeowners nervous. We were nervous. We didn't know how this virus was spread. So we were hoping that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA would make some changes, and sure enough, they did. They made some changes where they allowed some loans. Really, it's loans that have a lot of equity in it or a large down payment. They allowed appraisers to just do what's called a desktop appraisal. Mm-hmm. And it's a full appraisal, except the only thing we do not do is do a site visit. We're still required to verify our comps. We've got to get information about the house to do whatever source we can, which a lot of times involves calling agents. So you might be getting some calls from agents asking just some things about these homes. what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some information regarding the condition of the property without actually seeing it. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have very strict guidelines on how they want us to perform these desktops. And one of the guidelines is that they want us to verify the condition of the property through a separate source outside of MLS. So that got us excited because then we started doing some desktops. I would still say now 90% to 95% of the appraisals we do are just like we always have done them before. And we're just asking agents to help us out when we're doing site inspections, you know, leave lights on, leave doors open. If there's anyone in the house, we ask that they not be there when we're inspecting. So we've just adapted. There are a bunch of appraisers out there. I've talked to many of them. I've got appraisers on my staff. I've got appraisers on our management panel that are not performing site inspections for different reasons. Either they may have some autoimmune disease or they're living with someone that might be at risk. So what's happening now is that the pool of appraisers that actually do site inspections is shrinking a little bit. I would say in the last 2 months, it's shrunk 10, 15%. Couple that with low interest rates in the mini refi boom. We are extremely busy. The last 3 months at our office have been record months. In the past 13 years, we haven't seen this type of volume. And it's, you know, it's a mix of purchases and a mix of refis. So that's what's going on in our world. I wanted to do a little bit of research before we started this meeting. So yesterday I jumped into HAR, and one of the things that I've been accused of is being a numbers nerd, and I'm okay with that. I jumped in HAR and I did some research on Woodlands, the inventory, what's happening, just to kind of get a snapshot of where we are, what we're seeing, what's happened the last couple of months, and hopefully that'll kind of help guide you on what's going on. So in the Woodlands, as of yesterday, there were 514 active listings. There were 218 pending sales, which is quite a bit considering the last 2 months everyone's been on lockdown. In the past 12 months, there have been 1,653 closed sales in the Woodlands. And if you do the math, 1,653 divided by 12, the Woodlands is selling about 138 homes per month. That's kind of the average over the past 12 months. When I ran the supply demand to figure out the month supply for the Woodlands, I got a 3.7 month supply, which is a very, very good market. It's still in that supply range, it's still a seller's market. I would have thought it would have been different. Now this is interesting. So another thing that I did was I looked at sales in the past 30 days. In the past 30 days, there have only been 111 sales, which is well below the average of 138 sales. And then the month prior to that, there were 114 sales. So this is springtime. This is usually the very, very busy time. And it's off by maybe 20% or so. So just something to think about. I'll go through the positives because I think we're going to come out of this very strong. When I look at the median sales price in the Woodlands, median sales price is 402, which is well above the Houston average. The maximum sales price, 5 million. So if you've got buyers looking at properties over 5 million, they're going to be the highest sale in the past 12 months. Hopefully you've got a couple of those in your pocket. I'm just going to touch on a couple of negatives that I see in the market that we're all probably concerned about. And it's just something, not something to dwell on, but just something to be conscious of. And one is oil jobs are disappearing fairly quickly, right? Unemployment rate obviously is sky high. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of agents, a lot of realtors, a lot of mortgage professionals, it's been difficult for them to adjust to this new normal. Look how we're hosting meetings. I am not used to just talking and not having interactions with people. It's very difficult to do, but this is how we have to spread the word, get content out. This is how we have to deal with our clients. But listen, there are I started listing the positives, and I just didn't. I couldn't stop. There were just so many. Number one, and Jason will tell you, rates are historically low. It is time to refi. It is time to buy. I think there's enough inventory to where people can select the house that they want. And it's time to lock it in. I think people are realizing how small their homes are, especially those of us that have kids, right? I've got two little kids, two little boys under the age of 5, and I'm in 2,700 square feet, which typically would feel like a big house, but since we've been in it for the past 2 months nonstop, it feels quite small. People are realizing that they need additional amenities to stay entertained. We're blessed in the fact that we have a pool and a hot tub. And those kids have been in that pool and the hot tub 3 times a day for the past 2 months. Had we not had that, I think it would have made this time very difficult. So I think people are starting to realize I need to make my home my entertainment place as well. So people are starting to think. I've talked to realtors, I've talked to the average consumer, my friends, their friends, and they're all saying, look, I want a house with a pool. I want a house with an outdoor kitchen. I want a house with a big game room, separate media room. And honestly, I need a separate house for my kids. So we're seeing a bunch of that. Another thing that people are starting to look at, and I've been actually seeing some new listings pop up with some very unconventional space use in, now we're looking for additional workspace in the home. All of us are at some point throughout the day working from our house. Most of us probably work from our house all day, and I'm in a little tech closet. I don't have a dedicated study in my house. I usually go to the office, but it's something that crossed my mind. Now I'm upset that I didn't get the big house with the office, right? So I think people are thinking about that. The market's very, very balanced right now. If you asked me 2 months ago where I thought this market was going, I would not have been as positive as I am today. I think that we're more resilient than we think. I think Houston can brush off this pandemic just like we've brushed off every hurricane that's hit us, every flood that's hit us, and we're going to bounce back. And I read, I didn't get to read the article because I wasn't subscribed to this, but I saw a title that really jumped out at me. And I think it's something that we all need to think about is real estate is the new toilet paper. As soon as we come out of this pandemic, real estate is going to boom. So those of you who are slow right now, wait it out. It is going to boom. Rates are low. People want to move. People can now work wherever they want to work. If you work downtown and you've had to drive downtown for the past 10 years, now companies are being more flexible. You can work from home. That means that I can live in the Woodlands and not have to commute an hour every day. So people are going to start looking to the suburbs. I think we're going to have a ginormous influx of people moving to the suburbs from the inner city. And there's just so many positives. I could keep going, but I wanted everyone to know that, look, the outlook is good. I really appreciate what you realtors are doing, adapting. If it wasn't for you doing virtual, virtual home tours, and adjusting and meeting with clients through Zoom, however you need to meet them. There are buyers out there. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be in this position that we're in right now, which is a good position.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alex. And you're right. I read an article this week where they were talking about people, and you were talking about the different rooms and amenities they wanted in their house. And so now people are looking for the Peloton room. We all have to have a Peloton room in our house. If you have one of those crazy bikes, I don't have one, but if you're that person, then yeah, you need a Peloton room, so go buy a new house. Hey, I'm all about it. And we're here to help, right?
Totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, so
a question coming here. I'm going to answer it real quick.
Yes, I was going to say, I was going to ask, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Please tell agents not to price properties by the square foot. And yeah, it's a very simplified way to price a property. And listen, if we were living in Dallas and you were in a suburb neighborhood where every home was exactly the same because they've got crazy zoning laws, and sure, you could do it based on the price per square foot. The reason it doesn't work is because there's so many variations, amenities, site sizes that could affect that price per square foot. And on top of that, I know if you've been an agent for a while, you see that the larger homes sell for less per square foot, and there's a reason for it. Has anyone been to Costco before? Raise your hand. Yes. Do you know why Costco can sell 50 pickles in a jar for $10 and Randall's only sells 10 pickles in a jar for that amount? It's economies of scale. It's cheaper to put it in bulk. It's also cheaper to build bigger. If you talk to any builder, when they're building a house, the bigger it gets, the less it costs per square foot to build, and that savings is passed on. So that's just kind of a quick answer to that. I could go on and on about that, but hopefully that kind of puts you in the mindset of, I need to look at it a little bit differently. The price per square foot method may have worked for realtors in the 80s. I think the average consumer is a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, definitely. So Jeremy asked, can you share your top tactics on pricing homes for real estate agents? Like what are some tactics agents should be using then? If we're not going to use price per square foot, what should they be doing?
So it all comes down really to knowing your market and selecting the best comparables. Because when we're pricing a property, it's based on what has historically sold in that neighborhood in the past 12 months that's comparable. One rule in every appraisal, it's certification number 7, states that the appraiser has to utilize the sales that are locationally and physically the most similar. It makes sense, doesn't it? When you're looking for comps, try and find the comps that best reflect not just the value, but best reflect it comparable to the subject property. One thing that I do see agents miss quite often, actually they get it right sometimes, if your house backs a golf course or you're on the lake, it's definitely in the agent remarks, beautiful golf course views, beautiful waterfront property. But I never see in the agent remarks when the property backs up to a commercial strip center or is on a busy street, right? So whenever you've got a positive factor, you're obviously pricing it with that positive factor in mind. Houston and surrounding market areas, for the most part, 80% of the Houston market area does not have zoning. So you've got a lot of mixed use properties and you've got to take that into account. The typical buyer in the suburb is not going to want to pay as much for a home on a busy street compared to one not on a busy street. And it's something that you need to think about, and the way to kind of adjust that market reaction is by taking one sale that's not on a busy street, one sale that is on a busy street that's very similar, and look at what the price point difference was in their purchase price. That's how appraisers look at the market. We're looking at what the market reaction is. Contrary to what HGTV has told all our clients, just because you put 200,000 in a house doesn't mean it's worth 300 more. It's really up to what the buyer's willing to pay, and that's what we're measuring as real estate professionals. And unfortunately, I've never been on a listing appointment, but I'm sure I can just picture it. You've got a seller that's put in a ton of money in their house and they've listed everything to the penny and showing that to you. And because of that list, I think their property's worth a lot more. Well, it's our job as the professional in real estate to measure how those upgrades are going to be reflected in the market. So it's all about analysis, looking at the sales and also looking at your competition.
Yeah. So who else has got a question for Alex? I know you guys had some questions in the chat about a week or so ago about some appraisal deals that you were experiencing. So we've got Alex here who's happy to answer some of those questions for you guys. So just raise your hand or pop off of your mute and just ask.
Alex, if you get a low appraisal back, you're the listing agent and the buyer's lender gives you a low appraisal. As a listing agent, what's the best way to combat that?
Sure. So there's really two strategies here. Number one is you can do what's called a reconsideration of value. We call it an ROV. And basically it's just gathering extra information and sending it in to the appraiser for additional analysis. So I'll give you some tips on that. If you've got a pen, just write down the 3 R's. The 3 R's that I invented are read, review, and rebuttal. So the first thing you should do is get a copy of that appraisal and read it, because the appraiser spent a ton of time putting that report together, putting an analysis together, selecting comps, analyzing the market. And you need to spend the time to read and understand what is in this appraisal report. When you're reading it, you're also reviewing to make sure that the information is correct. I teach this in a class to realtors often. When you're writing an appraisal report, there are 800 boxes that we check off or fill in, and it's very easy to miss something. And I've seen appraisals that I've reviewed where the appraiser missed the box for the subject having a pool, right? And the subject does have a pool, and the reason it came in below the sales price is because the appraiser missed that box. So when you're reading it, you're reviewing it for any mistakes that could affect the value. The rebuttal process. So your job is to, A, if the appraiser has any mistakes in the appraisal that could affect the value, mention those, and B, if you think you've got better sales than the appraiser, send those in. I want to caution you that the sales that you send in to the appraiser need to be better than the ones in the appraisal report, or you're going to be very unsuccessful in changing their mind. Option 2, I told you there are 2 options. If you've gone through that and it's just a deal killer, you can start the process all over. If you're at one lender, unfortunately that lender is not allowed to order a second appraisal. But if it's a conventional loan, you could go to another lender, like my friend Jason Hyam over here, and they can start the process all over and maybe have better luck with a different appraiser. That's only on conventional loans. VA, the report stays with that property for a while. I think it's 4 months. FHA, the report stays with that property for 120 days. So
if you find a mistake in appraisal, that's also another reason why you can go back to a lender and ask for a second appraisal. Because although most of them don't do second appraisals, but there's a material defect in it, that's a reason why you can say, well, this appraiser seems incompetent. You didn't even check the box for the pool. Let's just get a whole nother set of eyes on it.
Yeah.
And then Alex, when you talked a little bit about, better comps, but can you also talk about looking at the comps that are used and explaining why you shouldn't use them? Like, hey, the house had a lot of cats, in it, 25 cats. If you get 25 cats, you use it or a divorce situation or something like that.
yeah, Jason, that's a great point. So one thing that I would suggest to agents, and I'm going to be frank, don't be lazy. Meet the appraiser at the property. When they're going to go inspect the property, meet them there and give them the information that you want to give them. So your job when giving them information is, what sales did you utilize to get to your value? You know, appraisers are very much engineer types. Realtors are very much sales marketing driven. So it's 2 very different languages, you know, meshing together. And the way to speak to an appraiser is just give them facts. One thing that I always ask appraisers to do, realtors to do, is let me know which sales are not good and why. Because, for example, you know, I am bound by certain rules that require me to utilize the sales that are the most similar. And let's say that the home next door is an identical model match to the property, and it's sold, but it's sold as a distressed property because it was a bad divorce or whatever other reason. It could have been a mistake, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the agent remarks. The appraiser is going to assume that that is a good comp. But you, as a realtor who typically work markets and neighborhoods over and over again, you might have more information about that house that you can share with the appraiser. So it's important to share the comps that are good and the ones that the appraiser may select that you don't want him to select because there's a certain stigma to it.
Right.
Great question, Jason. I've got a couple of other questions here. I like this one. Should a VA appraisal be similar in value to any other appraisal, or does it come in lower? So the way that we appraise properties, whether it's conventional, FHA, or VA, as far as a value standpoint goes, is exactly the same. I'm going to value it the same way in every scenario. However, there are different inspections that each one of those require. And there are some things that I'm going to look at on an FHA appraisal that I'm not going to look at on a conventional appraisal. So that's something that could affect the value, but the way and the process, the theory of how I'm getting to the value is the same.
Okay, Alex, the next question was, if the appraised value is higher than the sales price, does the appraiser just give the sales price as the value?
This is a good question. You know, what I love about purchases is that we do get a copy of the contract, so we kind of have a target to aim for. We don't get that with the refis, so refis are a little bit more difficult. An appraisal is not supposed to be an exact number. What it really should be is a range. And it's a range of, I'm going to get technical here, but just follow me. It's a range of your after adjusted values of the comps that you use. And the value can basically be anywhere within your range. And if my sales price is somewhere in the middle of the range, I'm typically just going to appraise it for at or near the sales price. There's no reason to raise red flags, because just like coming in below the sales price raises red flags, coming in well above the sales price can raise a red flag for underwriting as well. So it's, at the end of the day, we know it's going to help make the deal work, and we're being conservative, and it's just going to go through a little bit smoother. And that's why appraisers typically come in, if it is supported in the market, come in at or near the sales price.
Okay, good job. All right, so a couple more things. Why do some appraisers not go deep in window inspection? So I guess, I mean, talk a little bit. Is that like an issue, windows, for some appraisers inspection?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do is not an inspection, and I was very cautious in the words that I utilize. I said a site visit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Appraisers are not trained to find problems like an inspector would,
Right.
but we see something cosmetically wrong, we'll make a note of it and ask that an inspector further review it.
Okay.
Windows for conventional, I don't need to check windows. I don't need to check that they're functioning. I just, if they're there, they're there. FHA, I do need to check that they're functioning. So if there's an issue with them not opening, then I've got to call for a final for that to be repaired. So,
Right. Okay. So we have someone, they had an issue with an appraisal that did not make value. He did not let us know when he was going. He had just recovered from COVID and asked me to email him everything instead. If we are having a drive-by and desktop only, will we even have an appointment to be able to meet with the appraiser?
No, two questions here. Yeah, you will not be meeting the appraiser if it is a desktop or a drive-by. Now, it's up to the appraiser to reach out to whatever party they deem necessary to get the information about that house. So it could be even the buyer's agent that they reach out to, or maybe there are current photos on MLS that they can utilize. So unfortunately, with this temporary guideline change that Fannie and Freddie have, and FHA, you won't have the opportunity to meet the appraiser. I would suggest that maybe you can send that information to the lender, and the lender can forward it on. That's
Right.
one way to get the information to the appraiser.
And do desktop appraisals need to be approved by the lender, correct?
That is correct. And there's very specific guidelines, just to kind of give you a glimpse of it. Fannie Mae purchases, it's only if it's going to be a Fannie Mae insured property, and I think 15% down is the minimum. So,
All right.
To know if you get a drive-by or property inspection or anything like the other one is, if they're not measuring the property. So if you think the square footage may be off, you're not, I mean, is that correct, Alex? You're not going in the property, so how do you measure it, right? So I had an appraisal, I had 2 appraisals last year in the Woodlands, they were off by 400. And so had that been a drive-by appraisal, no one would have ever.
That's a good point. My recommendation is there are appraisers that will do a full appraisal. So thinking that a desktop or a drive-by might get you a quicker appraisal, that's not always correct. I would suggest to get the most accurate appraisal, just so you don't miss something like Jason just mentioned where the square footage could be different. I would always recommend getting the full appraisal and let your lender know. Just say, look, I know that my client might qualify for a desktop, but let's just do a full appraisal. They really cost almost the same. So get the full appraisal.
All right. Okay, anyone else got any more questions for Alex before we move on to the next part of our meeting? Alex, we appreciate you so much. That was great
Nice.
information.
That was great.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Tina.
Yes,
It's
yes.
Allison. I just wanted to reiterate, I know a lot of you guys probably already do it, but like Alex mentioned, it reminded me when he said, sometimes if you know something about a house and why it sells lower, let them know. There was a listing I had once and I was looking at the comps and I ended up calling the listing agent because I'm like, why did this house? There's nothing in the description that looks like there's something going on. And it was really unusual, but it turned out that I guess the seller had some communication with whoever ended up purchasing the house outside of that. And this guy was just a guy, he gave him a price. And he said, I told him even though it was listed, I think that communication had happened. So the seller was like, I'm just going to honor my word and we're going to sell it at this. There was nothing wrong with the house. But I think if you see those homes where you're kind of like, why did it sell low? Doesn't look like, foundation, it might be worth a call if there's a chance they may pull it. So call the listing agent and see what you can find out.
Absolutely, Allison. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us about that. That's absolutely true. So Lee, Alex talked a little bit about the market. Do you have anything you want to add to what he was talking about? Because I know you were going to do a little market update for us. So you want to just kind of jump in before we go to the agent panel and just, do you have anything else to add to what his numbers he pulled together?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Alex, and thanks, Allison. I think doing your homework before the appraisal and during the appraisal process, calling other agents, with anomaly sales to get background, those are great pieces of advice. I don't know, Alex, I guess you use the city, the Woodlands when you're pulling your data. Are you using?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I just typed in the Woodlands.
Okay. So I just pulled the Greater Houston stats first, and new listings are down year over year, 11%, and that's in the Greater Houston area. And then the number of listings that have been withdrawn year over year are up 11%. So there's less new inventory, and there's also less old inventory. So there's more stuff being pulled from the market by sellers and less stuff coming to the market. So there's just less and less inventory. But there's been an increase in activity. Showings are up over 12%, almost 13%. And web traffic activity on HAR is up 76%. So the buyers are out in full force and there's less inventory. So I think that's interesting. I think buyers that I'm talking to that I know that are in the market, they think it's a bloodbath out there and they're going to get a deal, and it's actually not the case. So it's important to educate the buyers on that. I dialed down the market a little bit deeper than Alex. I did $1 million plus, and then I did 500 to $1 million, and I did 0 to 500 because the market conditions, the different price points changes dramatically. So in May of 2020, this month, there's almost 28 months of inventory in the $1 million plus price range, and that's for the geo market area of the Woodlands, not just the city. So 28 months of inventory for $1 million plus. There's 8 months of inventory for the $500,000 to the $1 million mark. So buyers markets in both of those. And then from 0 to 500,000, there's only 3.8 months of inventory. So it's a big seller's market. So I would be trying to get as many $0 to $500,000 listings as I could. A number of closings. And all the price points are down. The number of new contracts are also down. So I think that's probably not surprising to anybody. But that's just kind of a brief breakdown. I've got some charts that I can share if anybody wants them.
Yeah, so why don't you just send them out in an email, and then we'll just get our agents in here and have them talk about how well they're doing right now. So we want to welcome our agent panel. And so if you guys will just unmute yourselves, so that everyone, so I don't have to find you. So Jeremy Larkin with the Icon team, Scott Laird with the Icon team, Teresa Sarton and Betsy Russell. You guys are here, and we want to hear. First off, maybe Betsy, we'll start with you. How's COVID affected you? Like, let's start there. Like, how's it affected you? Like, what's been your biggest challenge so far? And you just have to unmute yourself. Over to the left is the mute button. Are you there, Betsy?
Okay, here I go.
There you are.
I
There you are. I knew you would show up.
Yeah, okay. I just guess I stayed home for about 50 days. I think it was 52 days. I didn't I'm off. I'm muted now. You can hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we stayed home from like March 15th until Mother's Day. I didn't really go anywhere at all for those days. And what I found is that I did things a lot differently. I actually called people instead of doing one-sided communication like emails or text messages or even sending cards. Those are one-sided, and no discussion and no conversation is going to result. I might get a thank you, or I might get somebody to text me back, got your card, thank you. But when you have an actual conversation with people, that's when you start to find out what's going on and who they know and what their neighbors are doing, what their friends are doing. So that helped a lot. But I think the thing that I found the most is that for those 50 days, I didn't see my family either. I didn't have any contact with my grandchildren. So it helped me to see what a tremendous difference that made. I have about 13 or 14 in June that I'll be closing. And that's a direct result of what I did in April, because you're always working about a month out.
Right.
So I had time, a lot more time, and I had a lot more time to make those calls instead of just relying on one-sided communication.
So is that something that you're just going to continue to do going forward? It's worked
I'll
so well,
try.
obviously.
I'll try, but phone calls are really tough. I have a lot of older clients, and it's very difficult to get off the phone. It's so much easier just to send them a really nice card, but I know that's not the right thing to do now. And I saw the difference very, very vividly this past month or this past couple of months.
That's awesome. So Scott or Jeremy, what about you guys? What was your biggest challenge, and what did you do? How did you address it?
Got it.
Our biggest challenge was the team. We're a pretty big unit, being in scattered places and, Zoom calls like you see on the commercials with babies in the picture and stuff. So that was pretty challenging, because when you try to move a lot of units, everybody has to be in sync. The communication has to be really good. So I think maybe it did help our communication going through that a little bit. I don't know what Jeremy's thoughts were about that, but that was the biggest challenge I saw.
Right. What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think it was just it was one of those deals where I think some of the best, I guess, realtors are probably the best at implementing and shifting the fastest. And I guess we just kind of kept that mindset the whole time. And I mean, don't get me wrong, man, like anybody else, it got me down a little bit. There was probably about a 1 week period where I was just like, yeah, what the heck are we doing, But we just knuckled down, Scotty. We talked about some things we were going to implement, and we just moved really quickly. Now, I'm very blessed to have the team that we have. We've got a lot of great pieces in place, and obviously makes our jobs a little easier. It's one thing to have a vision; it's another thing to execute it, right? So we definitely have the right pieces in place to execute the vision. And I don't know. I think we came out of this better than we were before, honestly.
Well, what was one thing maybe that you changed as far as your team environment went? You're working remotely now, and you've got this big team, and you're trying to still sell all these listings. Like, what was one of the things that you guys kind of had to implement to kind of get everybody on board with that?
Well, just like we're doing here, implementing Zoom calls and that kind of stuff, and really just knuckling down. And, I guess we wanted to come out of this from a perspective of our clients. We wanted to be a point of information, whether it was our clients or whether it's, people we work with within the industry. And, it's one thing when you're doing really well, when the market's doing really well, or when it's a good selling environment. It's another thing to be a leader when the market's down. And I think that is the true definition of leadership. And, I think that's one thing that we stepped up and did really well. And I think Scott in particular I think he was very instrumental in what we did to our team here. And, I'm just really proud of how we came out of this thing, because we could have easily packed it in and been down in the dumps like a lot of people were. We just were, we refused to do that. So,
Scott, you got anything to add to that?
No, I mean, we even lost one of our biggest builder accounts right in the beginning of this COVID deal. And I think it made us refocus even more. So we were showing up in a big way. We hired people. We hired 2 people during this process.
Yeah.
I think surrounding yourself with good people. Betsy was spot on too. With actually, for us, as many deals as we do, when we were picking up the phone and calling our clients and checking on them, I mean, it was a huge feedback. I mean, we were getting tons of positivity from that. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Teresa Sarton, are you on the call? I know she was, but she may not be able to. I think she was driving actually.
Muted.
Are you there? Hi, Teresa.
I was actually meeting an appraiser, Alex. So.
Oh, okay. Well, good. All right. So, Teresa, you tell us about your challenge. I know you've got a team there too, and so tell us about maybe what was your biggest challenge and how you overcome it.
I think we struggled with communication first too, and we still kind of are. So, it's going to be fine. I mean, we, took a lot of classes. I've told several of you, either I'm going to be the smartest realtor after all this is done, or I'm going to check into the Betty Ford clinics.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, we've had a lot of happy hours and had some get-togethers and some, innovative things, because we like to do events in my neighborhood. And right when this all happened, we had the Easter Bunny have to cancel. So we improvised, and proud of Samantha for being the Easter Bunny that day and hanging out my car. And
well, I think it's kind of like what Jeremy said, that you just have to really pivot, and you have to pivot fast. You have to just figure it out. Like, this isn't working anymore, so I've got to go over here and do this. And I think Betsy just said the same thing. She was used to sending cards, and she had to, now she's calling people, and she's having, she's going to have probably a great June, but a better June than she would have had otherwise. So what have you learned about yourself or your team? Betsy, we'll start back with you. What have you learned about yourself through the crisis?
Well, one thing I learned is that I enjoy being home. Like, in my whole life, I don't think I've ever been home. Raised 5 children, always worked. So I found things at home that I love to do. But work is something that I love to do. So I worked a lot, but it was the things that I love, like the talking to people, communicating, Facebook. I got to cut back a little on the Facebook, but lots of Facebook posts, lots of thinking. Kevin and I did a lot of thinking about where do we go from here? What if things don't come back? What are we going to do if things just, if we do have this thing that everybody feared, that it didn't pop back? What can we do differently if we have to? We also came up with new marketing ideas. We haven't launched them yet, but we have some great ideas that I don't think we would have thought of. We went through data after data after data. He's an engineer. So we looked at everything, where every single person came from that we ever had, and how that could help us go from here. And we just really took advantage of the time. Like Teresa said, we really did a lot of educating of ourselves and came up with some new plans that we're going to hopefully implement between now and the end of the year.
Very good. That's awesome. Jeremy, what about you? What'd you guys learn about yourselves or your team through all this?
Oh man, wow. I feel like we You know, like Scott was talking about, you know, the combination of COVID hitting and then kind of losing one of our bigger builder clients at the same time, I found that we were a little complacent. I think that's one thing I found out about ourselves during this process. But all I did is just woke up a sleeping bear. And I mean, I will tell you, like, one thing I know about myself, I'm a sales animal. I know Scotty's a sales animal too. And it really just, you start knuckling down and you start thinking about, okay, well, you know, every lead's important. And what am I doing? Leads are gold. What am I doing to capitalize on those leads and convert those leads? And I just really knuckled down personally on my follow-up and really the team's follow-up as well, not just mine. And I mean, we're killing it right now. I mean, we were killing. I mean, there was really a very small time period where we had any sort of suffering. So
yeah. So did you find that your lead sources changed because of COVID, or was it just pretty much the same? I'm just curious.
No, I wouldn't. I don't think our lead sources have changed that much. We're pretty balanced, right? So we do get a fair amount of internet leads. And, we work with our sales team closely on ways to convert that. We do a lot of role playing and so on and so forth.
Right.
But, we've got a, 900 person past client database, right? So we've got a lot of people that, we can call on and count on. We've taken great care of people. We want to deliver a great experience to our clients. And it shows. I get honored when we get, I've had clients coming out of the woodwork here lately that I haven't not spoken to, but I haven't seen in years. These guys are still talking about the experience they had with us,
Right.
and sharing that story and sending us those referrals. So we're very blessed from that perspective.
Right. Scott, what about you? What have you learned about yourself or the team? Because I know you run the sales, you run the buyer side, right?
Yeah. So I run the sales team, but I think right away I figured out how determined we are for success. And honestly, if I had to take a step back, I think I realized in the middle of this that we're actually going to get bigger and better. And that's kind of creepy, but I know it's happening. So I know Jeremy knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, we're sitting a month or two into this, and I'm like, I think we're going to get even better and bigger. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Teresa, what about you? What'd you learn about yourself? I know you decided you're going to ride Peloton.
I did. It's right here. Get every morning. Yeah, I feel the same. I think I've gotten a lot into podcasts, and I do that in the mornings, and lots of people. Jason, I didn't know you had one. I'll have to follow you now. But I think it's going to make us better. It's definitely made us check our systems. We've hired a coach, and I just think it's just going to get better and better.
Yeah. So Jessica, are you here? Did you have a question or two you wanted to ask as well?
I'm just wondering kind of what these conversations look like. So, everyone talked about conversations, just calling your client. So Betsy, when you started making those phone calls, was it really just calling to check on people, or did you direct the conversation to real estate somehow?
It depended. I have my clients split up between my emotional and rational clients, and the rational people, they want to know about the market. They don't want me asking them, how did the twins do the first year they were split up in first grade? They don't want to talk about that. They want to know what's happening in my neighborhood. Is the value of my house going up, or is it going down? What do you think is going to happen because of this COVID-19? The emotional people, which is probably the overwhelming majority of my clients, are the ones where I would never ask them anything about the housing market or anything about, are you thinking of moving? But they will bring it up. They'll say, now that Drake and I are both working from home, we can't stand it. This is the one on Reedy Pond. I just sold their house and they're buying one that's 3 times as big. They're like, we've been thinking about it for a while, but now that we've been working from home and both of us are going to have that option to continue, we cannot be in this 1,300 square foot starter home anymore. They've been there for 6 years. And so I'm not saying they wouldn't have called me anyway. These are people I communicate with constantly, but being on the phone with me, they ask me the questions. How would it look? How would we sell this house when we're living here, both working in the house with a newborn? how would people come in? What would they do to make sure our baby didn't get sick? So it kind of like opened up those conversations that I don't know. I don't know. I would say like out of the 12 or 13 I have pending in June, at least 5 of them came from those calls. They were people that hadn't really been ready to pull the trigger, but I helped them. But I never started out by asking them, ready to move? You know, what do you think? You've been in your house 7 years now. The average person only stays 5.5. That's not ever how we do our business.
Right.
It's just a natural evolution. Most of the conversations started out by, you know, how did your dad do? How's he adjusting at the forum? I know it was horrible for him. Is he getting a little more settled in? You know, that kind of thing. Whatever I remembered from our relationship.
Right.
I think that's great. I love it that you were purposeful, even with who you called. You're rational minded versus your emotional.
Yeah, I love that.
To me. Scott, was it the same for you guys? I mean, or do you just hit the phones and talk to as many people as you can?
So yeah, we have lists printed out of past database, and we would try to go through a certain number of calls per week. But I would really just check in with them because they always take it to real estate. So you don't even have to. So they'll always be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, what does it look like out there? And then it's just wide open from there.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think a great question to ask them right away to start off is, how are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
You ask that question directly, and you'll get the truth pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty loaded question these days. And then, you know, just a question for you guys as a team. Or any of you, honestly, did y'all sit down and like recast a vision for 2020? Like, did you change goals? Did you, you know, anything like that because of the pandemic? Like, what is our game plan?
Yep.
Teresa, anybody who wants to answer?
I'll speak to that. So there are, you know, it's funny. So, you know, Scott and I are coached at a high level by the core, and the founder of the core, Rick Ruby, he really preaches big about there's basically 3 phases of life. You're either going into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of a storm. Right. So that's been hammered in my head for years. So obviously when COVID-19 hit, I mean, we were just blindsided by the storm. Right. But I had that voice in my head say, we got to get out of the storm as quickly as possible. That's really the key, is to get out of the storm as quickly as possible. And so, you know, yes. So Scott and I sat down, we reset some goals. You know, actually, you know, like any good business person should, you got to look at how you're spending your money. Where can you cut back on things that really look how you're spending your money, where your lead sources are coming from, you know, how, you know, what's your ROI on the money that you're spending. And, you know, we're pretty good at it. I found that we got better at it for sure through this COVID process. And, you know, and I think that's why, I mean, we're a lean, mean machine. And, you know, I know you guys have seen some like incredibly gaudy numbers from us, you know, over the years on like the listings, a lot of it with the new construction stuff in particular. And we still do, you know, our fair share of new construction stuff. I'm not purposely stepping out of that business by any stretch of the imagination. We're just not going to allow it to be the core of our business, and, you know, allow it to diversify. So we're actually probably going to do less numbers, but we're going to make more money. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I'm not looking for plaques. I'm not looking for trophies. At the end of the day, I want to make the most money possible. I want to take care of my kids, take care of my family, take care of my team, take care of Scotty. That's all I care about at the end of the day.
So we have a question like, why did you switch your focus?
To who?
Who's he talking to? Ross, you want to pop on and ask your question?
From new construction.
I mean, I'll be super transparent about it. I'm gonna be careful with my words here. You know, when you start really looking closely at the numbers, there's just not a lot of money to be made there. There just really isn't. And I got a really close friend of mine that said something to me. This was back in January when I visited. This is all before the COVID stuff, but it really kind of resonated with me. You know, you almost have to, and actually Jason's mentioned this to me before as well. You know, you really got to look at that new construction business. You almost got to run like a separate P&L for it. And once you start, the beauty of our business, we're putting up all these gaudy numbers. And Scott and I are making plenty of money. Team's doing great. You know, we got, you know, everyone's happy. But you really start digging into those numbers, it's just not as lucrative as you think it might be. It wasn't even creating as many opportunities as we thought it was. It's really interesting when you start taking that away, where you start putting your focus more on activities that make you more money. I mean, don't get me wrong, we wouldn't be where we're at today without all the new construction stuff. And I'm not sitting here telling you every new construction deal that or relationship we've had, you know, there isn't money to be made. But some of the big ones we've had in the past just weren't worth it. Is that fair, Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to make, and I wouldn't say we shifted all the way out of new construction. We
No,
just
of
have
course not. Yeah.
different areas.
Yeah. Well, so what do you think is something you guys are going to take away from this that you decided to do? I know Betsy, obviously she's talked about she's going to implement some new marketing schemes and those kinds of things. So what is something you guys are taking away that you maybe weren't doing before that you absolutely are going to do moving forward? Maybe a change to your processes or anything.
I think mine's calling my database more. I mean, because it's so simple and they love hearing from me and they love participating in Red Day. And I was overwhelmed. Our goal was 50 bags, which if Carly's on here, kudos to her. She sat at my house with a Cricut and made 50 bags. And we probably had 50 times 50 bags. I mean, ask Vinny, we did really good and they loved it. And, you know, they were talking to their neighbors, getting their neighbors involved, and we're sending them a video with all the stats, through BombBomb. And I mean, that's one thing for me. I mean, you guys know I've always been camera shy, but Zoom has brought me out of the closet, so.
Okay.
So I don't care because I listened to that girl and this is what I look like. So it doesn't matter. I can't change it. I don't have a makeup artist, you know?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you do not.
I need one, but that's 5-year plan.
All right, so tell me one last thing before we move on, because I want to make sure we get out of here on time. Tell me one thing you would tell agents right now that they need to know to be able to keep their businesses moving forward. You guys are all still killing it, just like you always do. And obviously you've stepped up in different ways. What would you say to agents out there who maybe aren't quite there, or what advice would you give them?
2 words: show up.
Show up.
I'm serious. Just get up and do your job just like you did before the virus, and do it with intention. Because I've seen a lot of slow realtors out there, and most of the time it's their fault.
That's so true. I've seen so many delayed responses and voicemails full on other call agents, and I'm like, you got to delete the deleted, and then you'll have a clear voicemail. But yeah, I mean, and I'm not talking about any Keller Williams agents, but but yeah, I agree to show up, and you know, consistency, that's something that we all struggle with, and I think this makes it really, really hard when you're all working remotely. It's just hard to but it's doable. I mean, with technology, it's so doable.
Yep, for sure. What about you, Jeremy?
I would say you have to know your numbers. I know I've said this for years. I've been on many of these calls. I've said this to many agents. If you're not running a P&L, you do not run a business. Period. If you need help running a P&L, I mean, I'll gladly teach a P&L class. It is something that is, that I enjoy. Actually, I may not come off as a numbers person, but I sure like looking at the numbers. And you can't run a business if you don't know your numbers. And so if now more than ever, especially the newer ones, like get into these good habits early.
Yeah, learn.
Don't wait until it's too late and you've wasted. You start thinking about the money you've wasted over the years, and it's, just start those good habits now.
And that was the first thing we did, is cutting the expenses. Oh my God, I'm up to $1,200 now off of stuff that I had no idea I was paying. I just, you just set and forget it. So.
Yeah. Betsy, what about you?
Okay, well, I agree with what everybody said, and I just think that, you have to, I know it's hard when your kids are home now. I don't have to worry about children underfoot that weren't, that were at school before, but you have to ask everybody you know. You cannot, everywhere I go, I try to bring the subject around. If people don't know I'm a realtor, I could be standing in line at a store. I mean, obviously not now with COVID, but I have always asked people at gas stations, every place I go, I never once had somebody say they wouldn't take my card. And I'll do it in a funny way or make a joke out of it. But, and my car helped a lot because my car is wrapped. So people are often looking at that and then I can just lead into a conversation. But you just have to ask it. I remember my dad was in sales and I think that's where I got the desire from. But he used to say he'd only hire people that were as hungry as they could possibly be. And I think about that sometimes because we had a horrible month in April. So Kevin and I both sat down and said, we got to not just have a good month next month. We've got to have a great month because we lost 5 of 7 sales in April, all directly related to COVID. So I think the hungrier you are, I meet a lot of agents that say, all I have to do is sell a house a month. That's not a hungry agent. A hungry agent is, I want to beat what I did last year or this month in June. We never had a 3.5 million month before. So I am driven to keep every one of these deals together. Because I want to do that. But having goals is the most important part of this business because you do things differently when you have a goal. There's no doubt about it. When Kevin tells me you've got to sell 3 more houses this month, then I'm going to do things differently. That's why coaching is just a fantastic thing. I've never needed it because I've had my husband who's like, he's listening right now, but he'll say, wow, what happened? You haven't closed anything in 2 weeks. You haven't brought me a contract. Then other times he's like, if you bring me one more, I'm quitting. That we had that 2 weeks ago. He had 7 contracts and 2 listings to do like within a week. Or within 4 days actually. But mainly it's just being hungry. The hungrier you are will drive what you do and you will get the business.
Yeah, that's great. Guys, I appreciate you guys so much for being here. I think this has been such a great help for everyone, great information. And before we all hop off, I did want to tell you guys how we did at Red Day. I think some of you guys did not know, but we actually raised enough money and food to feed over 40,000 people from the Montgomery County Food Bank. And so you guys
awesome.
Like totally give yourself a pat on the back. But we put together a little video, so I'm going to play it. I'm going to share my screen again and play it. So just hold on with me for a second.
That's Team W.
you go. So they raised enough for 40,000 meals. So you guys did a great job. Christy Griffin put the video together, so we appreciate that. Sherry, anything else you have to say or want to let anyone know about the office or anything happening around the office that they should know before we hop off?
No, I just want to say hi to everybody. We do have a Zoom call this afternoon where Ross Smith and Jennifer Key are going to be doing command training, and he's calling it contracts to payday. So it's from putting your contacts in all the way through commissions. And Lori Tillman, myself, Valerie, we will be there also as panelists. So come jump on. It's 3:30 to 5:30. Ross put out an email today, so the Zoom link is there.
And we will do happy hour tomorrow night instead because of the class that they're holding today. So our happy hour will be tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. So come and join us. Bring your best bottle of whatever you got, and we'll just raise a glass to each other.
There you go.
And I will be there next Thursday to see you guys, and so I'm so excited about that for sure. So anyway, you guys have a great day. Anything else? Just anything anybody else wants to say before we hop off and resume our week? Thank you, Betsy, Teresa, Jeremy, Scott.
Thank you, guys.
Alex and Jason, so much for being here and being part of our meeting today.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
All right, bye, guys. Have a great one.
Bye.
Hey, y'all. Thanks.